The second class of the Niche Content Crash Course is all about learning the content. Before we actually dive into the writing itself, I want to teach you guys about my article writing style, essentially. I'm going to take one of my existing articles and break this down for you in smaller pieces so you can understand exactly what is going on here. So you can understand why I'm writing things the way that I write them, why I am placing keyword phrases in particular places, why I am using the frequency of different keywords in the way that I am using them. All of this stuff at a quick glance may seem completely random, but it's not. It's actually intentional. It's planned out. Now this is important because article writing can really go a lot of different ways. You can sit down with any topic in mind and just write about it. And yes, you will come up with an article when you're finished. But the question is, what will the article accomplish? Ultimately, anytime you're writing, you have a purpose for that writing, whether it's something that you initially realize or not. I would encourage you to ask yourself this question before you start creating any article. Just simply ask yourself, why am I writing this article? What is its purpose? What goals do I want to achieve out of it? Am I looking to attract search engine traffic for a particular topic? Am I looking to move traffic along from that page to another page of my website? Am I trying to sell a product to the people that are reading this article? Depending on what you're trying to do, it can greatly affect what it is that you're writing, how you go about doing that writing. Now, the next class in this series, I will be going even deeper into this subject, talking more about writing styles and a number of different approaches to try to persuade your readers to take a certain action. But at this point, I at least needed to go ahead and make this apparent to you before we dive into all this, because it is really important. It is something that you need to keep in mind during this entire process. So during this class, my goal is to try to teach you about the basic components of an article. This is going to include things like the structure of the article. This will help you to ensure that you're not just randomly writing, that your writing has meaning and purpose, and that all of this content that you're giving your readers will be well organized so they can find the information that they are looking for. I'm also going to be teaching you where to put your keywords, how often you should be using these keywords. And I'm going to give you a brief overview of some basic HTML markup that you can add to your articles to help emphasize certain pieces of content, to make it to where you don't just have a long, never-ending article. You have different things in there that help to visually break up those paragraphs of text, and this simply helps it to be easier to read. This also gives you benefits with search engine rankings as well. At the end of today's class, I'm going to be showing you the first writing blueprint. This is the first of 4 that will be part of this series. This blueprint in today's class is more of a general purpose article type of a blueprint. It's also something that is useful if you simply want to write an article that is intended to solve a problem for somebody. This is a very common situation online. It's a very easy situation to find because there's always people out there looking for information, looking to have a particular problem solved. And it's also an easy way to transition from providing that information to trying to get the user to click a link or an ad or to buy a product. So I'm going to be demonstrating this particular blueprint so you can see how this relates to all the strategies that I'm going to be teaching you in today's class. Once you learn all of this, it will be a lot easier in the future classes as we move on to more complex ideas and we begin to piece all of this together so we can write a complete article from scratch. So with that said, I want to get into the essential article components in the beginning here for you guys. The essential article components are going to be the main pieces of your article. You obviously are going to have paragraphs of text that make up the majority of your article, but what about everything else? I often have various writers working for me that are providing me with articles, and I will ask them to provide an article on a certain topic. And even if I try to specify that I would like a title or a description or a summary or something like that to go along with it, a decent majority of the time, that kind of stuff is just simply lacking. And yet when it comes time to build a website with an article, you end up needing those pieces still. And so you have to assemble them yourself on the spot when you may not have even written that article to begin with. So whether you are dealing with other writers or trying to do the writing work yourself, understanding these essential article components from the get-go will simply help to save you time. While you're focused on the writing, for example, you can go ahead and take care of these other minor areas of the article that can become more of a headache if you put them off until you're actually assembling the website. So the first of these article components is the article title. A title should always be as short as you can make it while still making it meaningful for the page. However, you want to make sure not to ever go over 80 characters in length. That's kind of a max limit on the titles that I write. But personally, I really shoot for a much lower number than that. A lot of times I might end up with 40 or maybe even 50 characters instead. I find the shorter, more meaningful page titles to simply get better search rankings compared with the more elaborate, more creative, longer titles that really start to push the limit of that 80 characters. So with that said, what you're trying to accomplish with the article title is to take care of a couple of different things all in one fell swoop. Number one, you're looking to summarize what the entire article is about. Ultimately, you should really not be writing anything in your article that does not have a direct relation with this title. So think about the main topic that you have. Think about all the various subtopics that you want to write for it. And think about one title that you could write that would incorporate everything. But again, you want to make this as short as you can while still making it meaningful. Now, the other part of the title involves keyword phrase usage. This is something that can actually be kind of confusing sometimes, especially for people that are just getting started. They feel like certain things have to be in the title, or else they just have no chance of getting a search ranking. So for example, if they're targeting a particular keyword phrase, a lot of people will say you have to have that keyword phrase in your title. This is simply not true. In fact, I have found that it seems like the harder you try to target a keyword phrase, the less likely you are to actually rank for that keyword phrase. And all this kind of points back to the title a lot of times, where whatever your target keyword phrase is, there are tons of web pages out there for keywords that already have existing traffic, and the title of those pages is an exact match to that keyword phrase. This is really not the best way to go about writing an article title. In most cases, it will get viewed as simply keyword spam. A search engine may think you're just producing this content solely to try to get a ranking on that particular keyword phrase, when instead they really want you to be creating content because it's worthwhile content to create, because people might have questions relating to that content. So they're not looking for you to game the system. And one of the easiest ways to identify whether or not that's happening all comes back to this article title. The article title, when you're building in WordPress, also translates to your article URL. And so if your keyword phrase is your title and your keyword phrase then becomes the URL of that page, then it's just kind of amplifying that keyword spam in a lot of cases. So instead of only creating titles that are using just that exact keyword phrase that you're trying to target on that page, consider some other possibilities instead. One of which is to try to use some type of close variation on the keyword phrase, to where the basic words of that keyword phrase still exist in the title, but you're not really taking them and just blatantly putting the exact keyword phrase match in there. You're rearranging the words, you're adding some extra meaning to it. Another approach that I like to use besides that one is to take kind of the base word of my keyword phrase. A lot of times this will end up being the first word of the primary keyword phrase. And I'll use that in my title instead of trying to go for the full keyword phrase. a really great example that I have to demonstrate this particular concept here is a page of mine on IKEA down comforters. Yes, IKEA down comforters is a keyword phrase, but there is so much more that's being targeted on this particular page. I'm actually targeting 6 different models of this kind of product, all on this one page. You can see most of them, 3 of them are right here, 3 of them are right here. These keywords are the ones that are bringing the majority of the traffic on this page. But most of the keyword phrases all have this one base word in common with them. So I have made this the center of attention in my title. This is what my title begins with, and it's a short and sweet title, but ultimately my title references everything else that's taking place on this page of my website. So it's meaningful, it's short, and I'm not trying to game the system here. I'm not trying to squeeze all of these model names or something like that into the title. I'm targeting these keyword phrases in a fairly laid back, natural type of way. And this is really what you're going for when you are writing articles yourself. You'll get much better results this way. Now the next thing, the article description. This description is not something that the public is really able to see. For example, on my IKEA page here, my description is nowhere to be found on this particular page. You look through the whole page, you will not find my description anywhere. The description that I'm talking about is actually the meta description. This is a description that will sometimes be used by a search engine when they are displaying your page in the search rankings. So in addition to the page title, sometimes this meta description also gets shown in the search engine. So the title and this description here are super important because these 2 elements are sometimes the only thing that a person has to go on to decide whether or not to click on your page in the search rankings. So if the title and the description are lacking, if they're not going to make somebody want to click and find out more information, if it doesn't relate to what they're searching about especially, then your chances of getting traffic can reduce to even 0 by just missing or messing up on these 2 elements. So that's why these can be really, really important. So the description, you're in a way trying to do what your article title is doing, but you're embellishing a little bit more. I like to say it as the description is a summary of your entire article told in just one sentence. You want to make this less than 140 characters long though, so this doesn't need to be a huge sentence. Using my previous page here again as an example, the exact description that I wrote for that page is a major producer and distributor of a wide variety of household goods, including down comforters, is the Swedish-based IKEA. At a first glance, this doesn't appear incredibly exciting. it doesn't necessarily appear to really even target my primary keyword phrase or anything like that. But between this description and the title of this page, and then obviously the content that I have, and sometimes Google will take pieces of your content and turn that into a description to show in the search rankings too. But between those elements, this page gets thousands of search engine visitors every single month. When you look a little bit closer though, you can see that a lot of the base elements of the keyword phrase or the keyword phrases that I'm trying to target on this page, they can still be found in this description. I still use the phrase down comforters here. And you may also notice that this is a slight rearrangement in a way of what I had for my title, IKEA down comforters. So I still have down comforters here. I still have the word IKEA in it, but I'm embellishing on this subject and turning it into a complete sentence instead. I'm also kind of secretly using some semantic words here. When I use the word Swedish, it doesn't initially appear to be a semantic word or anything relational, but I can pretty much guarantee you that one of these semantic words for IKEA will be Swedish and Sweden, because this is where the company is located. And so this word is now associated with this word. I'm also talking about them producing and distributing these household goods, even more words that could potentially be considered semantic, all relating back to IKEA. So I'm trying to re-emphasize my main point while also trying to draw in search engine visitors. Since most of my search engine visitors to this particular page are all searching for IKEA related stuff, both my title and my description are making it clear that this page is all about IKEA and specifically about their down comforters. Now, to use this particular description that you're writing, the meta description does not actually go in the normal page content. It's something that you actually need a separate plugin to help you accomplish, but most people already use one of these plugins. I use the one called SEO Ultimate. There's also an alternative called All-in-One SEO. It should offer the same thing, where below the editor for a particular page, you have this SEO settings box where you can put this meta description in. Now the next thing is the article summary. The article summary is taking this one step further, and instead of describing or summarizing your page in a single sentence, now you want to do so in roughly 1 to 4 paragraphs, but ultimately the size is not really going to be that important for most websites. What I mean by that is this article summary is again not something that is going to end up on the actual page itself, but instead the article summary will end up on another page of your website. the page that is going to link up with your article. So the summary then can sometimes be dependent upon how much space you have available to write that summary, to display that summary. So as an example, I have these main pages of my site, and ultimately the summary for those pages is just this one little sentence right here. But these pages are also linking up with all the other articles that are on my site. The brands page here, for example, the brands page has links to a number of other articles on my site. And so each section here, Penzon, IKEA, Pacific Coast, each section is a summary for the page that it's linking up to. So these are the summaries that I'm referring to. So as you can see on a page like this, where I'm providing a lot of room, I can easily write 1 to 4 paragraphs. I could technically even go larger than 4 paragraphs if I wanted to, if it made sense for that particular topic. But on a page like this, I would have to limit my summary to just one single sentence. And even then, I would have a pretty strict character limit on that sentence to be able to make it fit in this space. So consider where your summary is going to go. Consider how much space you have for that summary before deciding how large or how small to write this actual summary. This is something that is usually overlooked, whether you're writing articles for other people or whether you're writing articles for yourself. But then when it comes time to assemble the website and you need that summary to assemble these other pages that link up with your articles, you end up having to write those on the fly, or sometimes you're inclined to just go and copy and paste a chunk of your actual article and to make that into your summary too. I've done it before, but it's better when you have a unique summary, a unique description, and that's content different from exactly what you're showing in the article itself. Beyond these different elements that are really not a part of your actual article that will be seen on the live web page, the rest of the article is what I call the outline, where you're taking the main topics that you want to discuss about your article topic, and you're organizing these subtopics and then simply explaining more about them. This is what makes up the bulk of your writing. As an example, I'll use this smaller page here because it makes a clear to understand example. On this smaller page, I have my title, which is obviously going to get seen. The description and the summary are occurring elsewhere. They're not being seen on this public page. So then everything starting from here, going down through the bottom of the page, this is my actual article. And so this is what that outline will be covering. So the outline, again, breaks down your main topic into a number of different subtopics. My main topic here is leaking down feather comforters. I want to try to solve this problem for people that are searching and people that are landing on this page. So I want to try to help diagnose and figure out and solve this issue for them. So first I start talking about why the down feathers leak. Then I start talking about how to avoid the leaking down feathers. And then I get into an actual product recommendation and forwarding someone along to the goal of this article. So this is what the article was written for. It was written to bring search traffic in and to pass them along to this page, where then I'm trying to refer sales on this particular down comforter that, compared to the other ones on the market, seems to tackle this particular problem the best. You may have also noticed past my outline, the other piece was my call to action. The call to action, that was my link down at the bottom. So everything in the article is leading people to this point. The writing in my article is leading people to believe that this is the next logical step to take if they are suffering from this issue and they understand everything that I have given out as far as why this happens and how you can try to avoid the problem. This will feel like the solution for a lot of them. And so this is what you're trying to go for with your call to action. In almost every single case, when you have an article on a web page, you don't want people to get down to the end of the article and to have nowhere else to go. You don't want any dead ends on your website. The only time your website should really result in a dead end is when you're leading people off to make a sale or to click on an affiliate ad or something of that nature. Otherwise, you want to try to keep people moving through your content. And if they get to the bottom and they have to scroll back up, go back a page, try to find a new page through the menu, they're much less likely to actually stumble upon another page of content that is of interest to them. But when you get them to land on a page, you know something about your reader. And so use that to your advantage. Based on what you know about the reader, what would be the best place to send them next? Whether it's another page on your site, whether it's trying to get them to click an affiliate ad or something of that nature, it doesn't matter as long as there is a purpose to the writing and you're trying to get your readers to continue to that next step, essentially. So this covers the basic article components that I've been telling you about. I am going to be getting deeper into these as we progress, but it's important to kind of have that clear understanding before you dive too far into this, or else things can just simply start to get pretty confusing. So the next parts that I need to talk about have to do with keywords. First, I'm going to be talking about keyword placement, and then we're going to get into keyword density. Density being how often you are using those keywords. This is extremely important and applies to any kind of writing that you may do now or into the future. If you want that writing to get search engine traffic, if you want that writing to be able to rank in the search engines, you need to be careful with your keyword usage. You need to ensure that keywords are in the right places. You need to ensure that you're using the right kinds, the right variations of keywords. You also need to make sure that you're not over or underusing your keywords, or else you can simply find the goals of your writing, the ability to attract search engine traffic from it, can simply go out the window by messing up when it comes to the keywords. This is also where I commonly see problems. I've taught a lot of people since 2010 how to build Amazon affiliate websites. I've been lucky enough to be able to see quite a few of those websites that my students have built. And pretty much any time that I see a site that is not succeeding, it's because of the writing. And it comes back to the keyword usage. Oftentimes that writing will not really contain useful information. A lot of times it really doesn't even contain information at all, as if that were possible, but it is possible to write, say, 500 words about a topic, and yet you don't really say anything about it. You can kind of write an article by just completely BSing, coming up with stuff off the top of your head, being very vague and general, repeating the topic over and over and over again just to try to create word fluff. But that kind of writing is not useful for a reader. That kind of writing is not useful for a search engine. So a lot of times that boils down to keywords. People think that you have to be using the keywords that you're targeting over and over and over again in their writing, or else you're not going to be able to get a search ranking for it. But again, this is simply not the case. In fact, the more you try in this area, oftentimes the worse your results become, because you just end up trying to use those keywords too much. So with that said, as far as the placement of your keywords go to begin with, your primary keyword phrase, you want to be using this as little as possible in your article. Just enough for it to make sense, just enough for people to understand that that is what your article is truly about. But you need to make sure that you're not overusing this. The most important placement, in my opinion, for the primary keyword phrase is in the beginning of your article. I recommend the first sentence if your writing just doesn't make sense with trying to put it in that first sentence. Try to make sure it's at least in the first paragraph of your article. After that, make sure it happens somewhere near the end of your article. A lot of times I'll do it in the final sentence or in the final paragraph, but it's quite okay if it's 3, 4, 5 paragraphs from the bottom. Beyond those two uses of your keyword phrase. Everything else should be used pretty sporadically. You may end up using it in the title of your page, which is something we already mentioned. It can also be a good idea when you are linking from other pages on your website to this page. It can be a good idea to use that keyword phrase or one of the base words of that keyword phrase. Referring back to my IKEA example that I have been pointing out, where I might be going after IKEA down comforters keyword traffic. I might also be going after traffic relating to any of these 6 types of IKEA down comforters that I am trying to target. Well, when I link up to this page from other pages of my website, I'm just using that base word that is common among basically all the keywords that I'm trying to go for. This is truly the meaning that I want to be taken out of that keyword phrase. This is what's separating one page from the other, is the fact they're all targeting down comforters, but each of them are targeting a different brand. So that is the important piece. So I'm using not the whole keyword phrase, but at least part of that keyword phrase, the base of that keyword phrase in those links. Beyond the title, beyond the links, and the beginning and the end of your article, everything else, you really want to be using it as little as you can. I'll go into some more specifics when I get along to the keyword density section next, though. In addition to your primary keyword phrase, you also have what I call a keyword variation. A keyword variation is essentially still your primary keyword phrase, but it's a different way of saying it. It's maybe a different tense. It's a different rearranging of the words. It might even be completely unique words that still mean the same thing. As an example, if I am writing a page about down comforters, I don't have to say, when I want to refer to those down comforters, I don't have to say the words down comforter over and over and over again. I can refer to that as something else and it be implied that I'm talking about the same thing when somebody is reading my article. So with a down comforter, I might call it a blanket. When I'm talking about the down feathers, instead of saying down, I might just say feathers. When people read it, they still understand I'm talking about the same thing, but it's different keywords that I'm able to use. And so this is kind of how you get around being able to use, say, your target keyword phrase. Instead of using it over and over and over again, you come up with a number of these variations of that keyword phrase. And then you use each variation a couple of times throughout your writing. Then as a whole, between your primary keyword phrase and these variations, you actually end up with a pretty decent number of these in your entire article. But with any one keyword phrase, there's not an overabundance of them, and so it does not get interpreted as spam. It, in fact, gets interpreted as the opposite of that, as valuable writing, high quality writing. Now, ultimately, where you put these keyword variations is not super important. I try to use them where I feel like there's a need for them. If I feel inclined to repeat my primary keyword phrase in my writing, and I already know that I've used it enough times and I shouldn't be using it anymore, I will try to instead use one of my keyword variations in place of one of those primary keyword phrases. So this is really more my recommendation on placement is not putting it in a specific place, but to use it in that particular scenario to replace those primary keyword phrases so you don't use them too much. Now, the other kind of keyword is a semantic keyword. The semantic keywords are just simply any other relational word to that primary keyword phrase. The more of these semantic keywords you have, the better off you're going to be. You want to make sure you're dealing with unique semantic keywords. So, for example, if you're writing a page about the Ford Mustang, the word car and the word cars would certainly be unique semantic keywords, but you're not really getting a lot of, difference there. You're more or less using variations of the same semantic keyword in that situation. You're more instead looking to use as wide of a variety as you can. Car, automobile, vehicle, those types of words. Also dealing with anything relating to that subject. Writing, car maintenance, engines, interior. Anything having to do with those subjects would again be all of these semantic keywords. So you're wanting to essentially have as many different unique relational words as you can being used in each article. And again, all of these point back to your primary keyword phrase. The more you're able to use, the better chances you're going to have to get good search rankings. This also makes your content simply better. It reads at a higher value when people are not seeing the same words repeated over and over and over again. Next up, we have the keyword densities. I talked about how to find keyword densities in the previous class. I showed you a free tool you can use to simply process an article or a web page to find out what those percentages for certain words are. This is what you're looking to do when it comes to keyword densities to analyze your primary keyword, your keyword variations, and your semantic keywords to make sure you're using them enough, but then also to make sure you're not using anything too much. I ran a keyword density scan on this particular page, solving leaking down comforter feathers. So you could see the results from this, see what exactly I'm referring to here. In general, you want your primary keyword phrase to not be used too much, but not be used too little but there's not necessarily an exact number or even an exact percentage that you want to be aiming for. However, though, it is something that you can kind of get a rough idea of what Google is looking for by scanning a lot of different pages and seeing what's working and what's not working. For that reason, I recommend shooting more in the 1 to 1.5% range when you are dealing with your primary keyword phrase. Leaking down comforter feathers, leaking feathers. These could be considered my primary keyword phrase. Technically, my complete primary keyword phrase on this page would probably be this full phrase, leaking down comforter feathers. And this doesn't really track the forward phrases, but I can still get a pretty clear picture of whether or not I'm overusing these phrases based on the information that it's giving me. For leaking feathers, something I would maybe consider to be the base of idea of my primary topic here. I use that 4 times in an article that is a total of 589 words, and that gives me a keyword density of 1.36%. And this page, on average, does rank in the top 10 of Google. Now, the important part here is to not go too high, but also to make sure that your words are not completely insignificant. You know, you don't want to see your primary keyword phrase all the way down at the bottom with 0.3 or 0.6% or something like that. You also don't want to see them up here at the top, like of the, which isn't technically even a keyword phrase. It's really stop words. So I don't even consider those to be relevant. But for that, there's a density of 3.4%. If this was my primary keyword phrase, though, that would be way too high. I would want to chop that at least in half, drop that down to about 5, maybe even a little lower. So what I recommend is to aim for about 1%. If you end up going a little bit over that, it's quite okay. Just make sure you're not drifting closer to the 2% range. Now, in addition to the primary keyword phrase, you have other kinds of keywords that you're going to be using. Things such as keyword variations and semantic keywords. In general, I recommend trying to keep both of these, all the other kinds of keyword phrases that you're going after, try to keep them below 1% whenever possible. But something that you can see being very clear on this particular page is that I definitely have some keywords that are topping even 2%. Fabric, I used 14 times. Feathers, I used 17 times. Even the word comforter is drifting close to 2%. The reason why this is a little more acceptable in this case is because I'm dealing with a smaller article. I'm more around a 500-word article here as opposed to, say, a 1,000-word article. If I process my IKEA page for you, the IKEA page is also a page that is very consistently ranking in the top 10. In fact, I believe the average position for this particular page is somewhere in the top 5 to 7 or something like that. And this is over thousands of keyword phrases that bring it a ton of traffic. This page has 1,218 words. And as you can see, there is not a single word or phrase that is used on this entire page that occurs more than 2%. Every single thing is less than 2%. Most of it is less than 1%, in fact. I only have these 4 two-word phrases and these 3 one-word phrases and just this 1 three-word phrase that's above 1%. And so this simply means that I have a pretty decent amount of unique words, that I've done a good job with keeping my keyword density low. And instead of trying to talk about the same thing over and over again, I'm trying to talk about a lot of different things that all relate to my primary topic. Now, I've mentioned unique words a lot along the way. I think it's also worth pointing out the kind of ratios that I'm looking at here on pages of mine that have had really great search rankings and have maintained those rankings for a long time. This particular page has 609 words on it that are not stop words. And of those, 318 of them are unique, are different. So this is a little over half of my word count. It's right around a quarter of my total word count. Notice on this page, I'm also dealing with pretty similar ratios still. Half of 302 is 151. I have a little over half, and I'm not too far off of being right around a quarter also on unique words to total words, including the stop words. So these pages are not just theory, they're based on real-world results. These pages have a lot of search traffic. They have really great search rankings in the top 10 of Google, and they've maintained them for a long time. So when you see consistencies like this, low keyword phrase usage, fairly similar ratios in terms of the amount of unique words that I'm putting into any one given article, it's definitely something worth paying attention to. I can't guarantee if you make, over 50% of your words unique that you'll definitely get a search ranking. But if you're following these general guidelines and you're not overusing your keyword phrases and the keywords that you're using are relevant, if they all relate to each other, that is when you stand the best possible chance of being able to get great search rankings based solely on your writing, on your content. So next I want to talk about special content markup. I'm going to do this part fairly quickly because a lot of people that are using WordPress, for example, may not have a ton of need to actually understand these HTML tags because WordPress can do this stuff for you. But it is worth understanding why you should do these things or when you should do these things and how this pertains to article writing as well. This special content markup is basically a way to take what would ordinarily be a big article of a bunch of different paragraphs of text and to visually break it up to make it easier to read for your users. What I mean by that is look at the different pieces of my page and notice how there's more than just a never-ending article. I have these pieces of header text that break up my article. The header text is in bold. I have different layouts of content, different colors sometimes of content to draw the eye to certain things. I also have lists of different features of products, for example. So I could have had all of this information just in never-ending paragraphs of text. Ultimately, it would be pretty hard to read through all of that and to not lose your place in it. But this makes it a lot easier to digest, a lot easier to say, okay, well, I'm really only interested in this one certain kind of product, so I'm just going to read about that. So people, when they get to your page, they don't have to consume all of it. They can just consume the parts of it that they want to. And so this all begins with this special content markup. The first one of them, the header tag, is something that I use in basically every single article that I write, where my paragraphs of content are not random. A couple of paragraphs will all have to do with one particular subtopic. And I'll have a number of these different subtopics progressing down my page. All of those subtopics, I give them a title and I turn them into one of these header tags. So what I mean by that is if I use this IKEA page as an example, this phrase, IKEA comforters here, is a header tag. Downfill, warmth rate, comforter care, all of these are header tags. When I'm actually writing my article though, it might look something like this, where I have my header tag and then I have a couple paragraphs of text that are describing and talking about that subtopic. What I'm looking to do is to turn this into a header tag. And so this can be accomplished in a couple of different ways. One of them is by using a true header tag, which is where you use a less than symbol, and then you use the letter H, and then you use a number to go along with it. So this is going to be an H3 tag. And you surround your text in this. Now ultimately, as I mentioned, if you're using something like WordPress, you really don't have to worry about this kind of stuff. You don't have to know these actual tags. What you can do is just simply select each piece of text that you want to turn into a header tag and just click on the B that is up in your WordPress toolbar. Now the B is actually not creating a header tag, it's creating a strong tag. And so it's a less than and a greater than symbol with the word strong in the middle. And then you just simply have your text in between. Now the closing tag is the same thing, but you just, in front of the word, you put a /. Now I have all of these tags laid out for you in the guidebook for your quick reference. But I just thought it would be helpful to demonstrate exactly how this works, that these tags are being wrapped around the text that you're trying to mark up in these ways. Now you also have things like bold, underline, italics, where you're just adding these different effects to text. To achieve bold, you wrap either strong or B tags around the text that you want to turn into bold text. Underline, you're wrapping U tags. Italics, you're wrapping I tags. So these fairly simple little content additions can really help to turn a plain looking article into something that's more appealing to read, that's a lot more interesting to look at, and that simply makes it easier for readers to find the information that they're looking for. Sorry guys, it appears as though the screen was not updating this time. I'm not quite sure why. Can you see the notepad that's on my screen now? Here we have just a basic warmth rate text, and I have wrapped an opening H3 tag and then a closing H3 tag around it. Okay, great. Sorry about that, guys. Warmth rate. Here again, I've wrapped an opening and a closing strong tag. The tags that I've mentioned, H3 being a header tag. The reason why it's H3, by the way, in WordPress, the title is typically an H1 tag, the title of your website. Then you have the title of your page, typically ends up being an H2 tag. And then so it's a downward progression. The next should be H3 tags. All at the same level though. So all of these, warmth rate, downfill, IKEA comforters, all of these would be H3 tags. Strong is an alternate method of that. Strong just makes it bold. It will look the same, essentially, as an H3 tag. So it still achieves the same effect. A lot of times I usually just end up using the strong tags myself to make both header tags and just standard bold text. My main point in doing that is not to try to game search engine rankings or anything like that, even though some people do try, incorporating keywords and stuff in these special content markup items. I'm really more interested in it for user readability, to make my articles easier to digest, to make it to where people can find the information they're looking for a lot easier. With the list here, the last thing that I want to mention, I pointed out one of these lists on my webpage. Each of these sections here is its own standalone list. So I'm actually using 6 of them in this one section. So I have a bit of text that I have turned bold to make it the header for this, and then I am using my list tags to create this part. So I start out when I'm writing, I'm just writing 3 standalone sentences. I put them each on their own separate line. I just make it clear when I'm writing that I want to make these into a list. And then I can come back with my writing later on and transform it into a list. So to show you what I mean, I'm going to use the text that I was just working with. So I might have this in my article writing, and I know that I want to transform all of these into list. And then I even have my header to go up above it. So I could wrap the header in strong tags to make it bold. To accomplish the list, I then need to decide what kind of list do I want. I have an ordered list, which is where each item will be assigned a number. So the first one would have the number 1 in front of it, the second would have the number 2, and so on and so forth. This would be more for if I'm doing like a tutorial or some type of steps that I want to lay out for somebody. An ordered list is what I would want to use. For an ordered list, you're going to use the OL tag. On this page, though, I did an unordered list, which is going to give you the bullet points that you are seeing. For an unordered list, that's going to be a UL tag. So I need this tag to be at the beginning and at the end of my list. So one is an opening tag, the other one is a closing tag, the closing tag having the / added to it. Everything in between is now a part of the list. But to make each of the rows, to make each of the bullet points or the numbers count, I need to assign each line as a list item. And this is done with another tag, the LI tag. So you have an opening LI at the beginning and a closing LI at the end of each of your lines. So I just copy those closing tags and copy those opening tags and put them at the beginning and at the end of each of these sentences. So this is my entire list code now. This is what creates, actually all of this here is exactly what creates this right here on my page. So it's just a way of taking what would ordinarily be basic text, a couple of sentences, maybe a paragraph of text or something like that, and breaking it down to where it's a lot easier to read, especially when all of this information has a direct relationship to where it can be laid out in a list format and it simply makes sense. So all of these tactics can be used to turn what is ordinarily a plain boring article into something a little more useful and effective. Now finally, I would like to go over my writing blueprint with you guys so you can understand how exactly this works, what the intended purpose of it is. So this way you will be able to utilize this writing blueprint in the future. Now there are a couple of ways that you can really go about using this thing. One of them would be to simply print it out or make a copy of it on your computer, and then you just simply write within the blueprint itself, whether that's on the printed paper or within an open document. I have provided a couple of different formats for you guys. Later on, when you're accessing all the class materials for this, there will even be a third version of this writing blueprint available for you. One's a PDF file, one is a .doc file, which should be something that most people can open using things like Microsoft Office. I will also be including the file that I use for something similar called OpenOffice. If you're planning on doing any kind of ebook writing, things of that nature, OpenOffice is amazing. You basically get Microsoft Office, but without having to pay for it. It's a completely free open source software, and you have your word processor, essentially everything that I've produced for you guys, the slideshow, the ebooks, the blueprints, everything is all created within OpenOffice, and I can export PDF files to create ebooks out of it, the whole 9 yards. This can be really helpful for you as a writer, so I thought it would be worth mentioning this to you just in case you are not aware of that. Now you can also just work in a blank document. Open up a blank notepad file, and as you go through this writing blueprint, when you're supposed to write something, you instead just write it over in your blank notepad file. This is more feasible for people that might have multiple computer screens, but if you just have one, you probably don't want to be sitting there flipping back and forth between windows. That can certainly slow things down. So with that said, this writing blueprint is intended to let you kind of codify an article, if you will, breaking the article writing process down into a series of easier to understand steps and concepts. And then when all of this is put together, you have a complete article. Now I'm just using the PDF version here, so I can't actually write within this, but if you're using, say, the Microsoft or OpenOffice versions that I'm providing you guys, you can just simply make copies of it and write directly within this blueprint if you prefer to work that way. To begin with, it's worth mentioning that a number of the parts of this blueprint are not your actual article, or they're not just your actual article. This includes other information like your keyword phrases. It also includes things like the title, the meta description, the summary, the elements of your article that are not necessarily part of the article itself, but they're still important to have when you're writing. So with that said, you simply want to take this blueprint, start at the top, work your way through it. It will prompt you for different pieces of information, and you just simply provide that information. So for example, we start with the article keywords. You can even use this type of stuff when you are researching your articles to begin with. Record your keyword phrases. What is the main keyword phrase that you're trying to target in this article? What are some different variations of that keyword phrase that you can come up with? And then what are all of the other secondary or semantic keywords that you were able to find that you want to try to be utilizing in this article? Make a list of all these things. When you have this in front of you to refer to, it becomes a lot easier. You make sure you don't miss items in your list because of certain steps like that. So once you have your keywords completed, you move along to the article title. Now for each of these additional parts, starting with the article title, going through the rest of this blueprint, you're going to see this same type of format provided for you. What it is mentioned at the top. So this is the article title. Then I have a space for you to write whatever it is you want to be writing for this section. So we have a space here where you can actually write out your final article title. Everything below it then has to do with this article title. I provide some basic recommendations to help refresh your memory on key points of this particular piece of the article, what you need to pay attention to, what you should avoid, things of that nature. So with the title, for example, I mentioned again that your title should be less than 80 characters. You're just looking to summarize your topic with a handful of words, things of that nature. When to use keyword phrases in these different areas. I also provide you with a couple of real-life examples, things that I've been demonstrating to you in today's class from my Leaking Down Comforter page and the IKEA Down Comforter page, both of which have had long-term top 10 search rankings. These pages demonstrate what you're trying to go for in general with the writing that you're doing. So every piece of this article, I'm giving at least one example of what it is that you should kind of be shooting to achieve with that part of the writing. And this should hopefully help to make this whole process a lot easier for you, especially when you're first getting started and you might be a little unsure of what to be putting in certain places of your article. Now, I also, as part of this blueprint, I emphasize this solving leaking down comforter feathers article because I feel like it makes a really great example of a fairly basic, straightforward article topic where I'm trying to solve a problem. Solving a problem is something I mentioned earlier. It's very common online. There's all kinds of problems out there that people are looking to try to find the answer or the solution for. And a lot of times that can lead to traffic and sales for you if you can help to set up these situations correct, to attract the right people, and to pass them along to the next step in the right way. Part of this involves how you are trying to tell them about this problem. How are you trying to educate them about the issue? And so you'll see parts of this writing blueprint that are in reference to that, talking about solving these problems and how you should kind of be writing to try to achieve this objective. For example, right here, I say that the title may indicate a common problem. It may also hint that the solution to that problem is found in the article. So referencing this particular title, that is what I'm referring to here. I'm not only mentioning what the problem is, leaking down comforter feathers, but I'm also hinting that the solution might be found in this article. I'm saying solving leaking down comforter feathers. I don't say that there's definitely a solution here in this article, but at least it hints that the solution might be there. I am going to do my best to try to help solve this issue for people. I am going to try to provide as much information as I can, maybe to even help them solve it without buying a product. But there will be some of the people that will appreciate that information and feel like their best option is to just buy a new comforter that is less likely to have this type of issue. Next up, we have the article meta description. I again provide a place to write it. I provide my recommendations for it. Most of these things being stuff that I have already kind of gone over with you guys, so I don't want to rehash every single item of this for you. But, you know, also continuing on with the problem trend, if that's what your article is about and that's what the title is referencing, continue that on to your description. Continue that on to your article summary even. Mention the problem. Maybe even imply that the solution is found in the article. Now here, this is the meta description for that leaking feather page. One of the biggest concerns of users of down comforters is leaking feathers because they push themselves directly through the fabric. I'm not necessarily implying that I have the solution to that in this particular statement, but my title definitely, hints that I'm either trying to provide the solution or trying to help them solve this issue. So I didn't necessarily repeat anything having to do with that, but I definitely re-emphasized the problem here and even mentioned one of the primary causes for this particular problem. So I am certainly embellishing on the point that I am trying to get across here. Continuing with the article summary being usually a couple paragraphs of text that's going on another page of your site that will link up to your article. That article summary for my leaking feathers page is right here. Another issue is feathers leaking out of the comforter even when it isn't ripped or torn anywhere. This actually occurs because of the quill on the feather getting between the fibers, which allows the entire thing to slip out. Find out which products do not have this problem and learn more about the ones that do. So this is what is intended to entice people to visit this page from other pages of my website. It's certainly mentioning the problem. It is certainly saying that I can help to direct them to the right products that may have the problem, may not have the problem with, depending on what kind they are. So again, I'm doing the same type of thing here. I'm re-emphasizing that problem for that particular page. And again, I also provide you with the other example that's included here is the example from the IKEA down comforter page. Now, when we get into the actual article itself, that starts with this part, the article introduction. So everything from this point down in this blueprint will be the actual article itself. So if I copy what I write here and what I write for all the sections down below this and paste them all together, that would be my entire article. And then all the other things that I've written are going to be those different essential elements that go along with it. So to begin an article, before you really dive in and start talking about a subtopic for your article topic, I start every article off with kind of an introduction. A lot of times this will be a couple of paragraphs long. 2 to 5 is a good range that I like to provide. And this introduction is basically just going to tell people what to expect from this article. In a lot of cases, it will be fairly similar to what the description and the summary have been, except now I'm looking to maybe give a little bit more detail and information about it. I also want to be sure that I am including my targeted keyword phrase. I also want to make sure I'm using variations in a number of different semantic phrases. So in the beginning here, down comforters, leaking feathers, this is my primary keyword phrase, but it's basically reversed. I'm still using, though, all the words from that primary keyword phrase in the first sentence of this article. Everything else is basically semantic words, reinforcing that primary topic. Talking about leak, rips, fabric, seam tearing, undamaged products, feathers, fill rating, fill weight, usage habits, fabric thread count, fabric quality, fabric weaving. All of these are relational topics to my main topic, the leaking feathers. So it helps to reemphasize my point. It also helps to kind of clue people in as to what might be happening. This particular introduction here, it's maybe a little bit shorter than I will typically find myself writing. I would commonly add, especially these days, I wrote this article probably 4 or 5 years ago or something like that. But the point is, it's still effective today. But today, I would probably add on an extra paragraph to this, just telling people what's to come in this article. In 1 or 2 sentences, what would you expect to learn or for the rest of the article to be about? So I might say something like, let us teach you about why feathers leak from down comforters, and also tell you a couple of solutions to permanently solve this problem. Something to that effect. Just to give people a brief rundown of what's to come, to keep them interested in wanting to continue reading, to finish up reading your article. Next up, we have a subtopic heading. I call this subtopic heading number 1. Ultimately, you can include as many subtopics as you want to in your article, as many as makes sense for your topic. For the purpose of this blueprint, I have just included 2 or 3 of them, the last one being kind of the conclusion of the article. But if you wanted to write, say, a 1,000-word article, and you had 5 or 6 different subtopics that you wanted to talk about, that's certainly quite okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I do that all the time myself, in fact. This blueprint is really more designed for an article that is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 500 words. So if you're aiming for 1,000, you would definitely need to add in more of these subtopics to really be able to achieve that number of words without having to have, huge sections of your page all devoted to one particular subtopic. So with that said, these subtopics a lot of times might just be a key point or a feature of a product or a certain semantic keyword phrase that you want to talk about in a little bit more detail. So you provide the heading for that topic, and then you just continue with writing about that topic. So for example, in my actual articles, here's my subheader text, and then here's the writing that goes along with it. So basically everything right here is what I would have ended up writing for this section of my blueprint. So I start by writing the subtitle first. That's something that I will turn into bold text. Then I'm going to explain that subtopic using something like 2 to 5 paragraphs worth of text. If I'm dealing with a problem where I'm trying to address and solve a problem, like with this leaking down comforters page, I have a certain type of strategy that I like to follow with this. First, I vaguely describe or mention the problem, the fact that it exists. Then I go into detail about why it happens. So that's the focus in a problem article of this subtopic number 1. I want to explain why this problem happens. Different situations where this problem might occur. And so I'm not trying to solve the problem for them right now. I'm trying to make them aware of the problem and to explain how that problem even exists. Now, if I'm not dealing with a problem type of an article, this subtopic again is just an in-depth discussion of whatever subtopic it is that I want to talk about. A lot of times that subtopic might be a secondary or a semantic keyword phrase that I am trying to target on the page too. So these subtopics are just key points that are breaking down my main article topic into all of these different smaller pieces. In general, when you get down past the introduction of your article, you want to try to switch your focus from being all about the primary keyword phrase and to switch it into being more about your semantic keywords. So you really want to be talking about your primary topic now and not actually mentioning your primary topic itself. And so this is how I go about achieving that by breaking the main topic down into all these different sub-pieces. That way I can talk about them instead and put a little less focus on the primary topic while still everything relates to itself. So here is the next section in my article, the Leaking Down Feathers article, where I'm trying to explain why this problem happens now. Why do down feathers leak? And so over a couple of paragraphs, I simply explain this situation and why it happens. But I'm not trying to solve the problem yet. So the next step, going down to subtopic number 2, this works the same way. I still have bolded header text. I still have 2 to 5 paragraphs worth of content that are describing it. For a topic that is not related to a problem, again, this is just another section where I'm doing an in-depth discussion about another subtopic. So just like with the first one, it would be the same thing here. And you can have as many of these as you want to in your article, however many would make sense, however many different subtopics you want to be discussing. For a problem-related topic, though, this section, I want to be talking about how to avoid or overcome this problem. What can they do? What specific kinds of product features could help them to overcome that problem, but without actually mentioning a product at this point? You want to try to avoid promoting a product. Yet, you do that later on when you get down to the conclusion. So, this section of my Leaking Feathers page is about avoiding these leaking feathers. I talk about as I mentioned, product features that might help to avoid the problem. Tighter weaves are the most effective at stopping the leakage, but I don't tell them yet what down comforter has this tighter weave. I'm setting up the situation right now. I'm explaining everything to them. Why the problem happened, how to avoid the problem, and then finally, when you get down to the conclusion, the solution to the problem. This subtopic number 3 on a normal article might just be yet another discussion of a different subtopic for your entire article. For a problem-related topic, though, this is where you are now presenting that solution to the problem. Tell them, in a lot of cases, about a very specific product. One product. Don't try to overwhelm them with choices either. Tell them one product that's going to help to solve the issue that you've been talking about on that page. There's a couple ways to do this, though. You can show an outright ad for the product at this point in time while also talking about the product briefly, or you can just include a link to another page on your site that then promotes that product. This is actually what I find myself doing in most cases. I'll have a number of pages on my website that promote one particular product or maybe a brand of products within a certain type. So this page is promoting Pacific Coast comforters. I obviously had another page that was promoting IKEA comforters. So this informational page that is looking to help solve a problem is taking traffic from that topic of solving this problem and directing it along to a certain product. But I'm not doing that by putting an ad on this page. All I do is put a link using relevant keyword phrases to point to that page. So I have a link here that points to my Pacific Coast page. And people do land on this page from Google, read the article, they travel to the Pacific Coast page, and obviously not everybody, but some of them do end up buying that Pacific Coast or one of those Pacific Coast comforters by navigating through this process. So that's what the goal of this conclusion is to wrap everything up. Based on everything that I've been talking to you about so far in this article, what is the next best, most logical step to try to get the reader to take? Is it reading something else? Is it going and checking out this product because it's going to help to solve this problem that I was just talking to them about? Ultimately, it doesn't matter. It's just important that you identify the purpose of each article and try to direct that traffic accordingly using this conclusion. So this should end up being at the end of most articles that you write. If I'm dealing with a standalone page that's just promoting one particular kind of product, I might even try to conclude that page with another ad. I have ads higher up on this page, but then I also have, other ads linked into my page further down that are intended to try to capture any remaining traffic that hasn't quite made up their mind yet. So pretty much no matter what kind of page I'm trying to build, I'm still more or less taking this same general type of approach. I'm just sometimes slightly adjusting, my overall strategy depending on what my particular goal is for any one given article. So with that said, This teaches you everything about how I break down this content, how I kind of wrap my head around a particular article topic and try to turn it into a number of different steps that I can complete. So I'm not overwhelmed by the entire subject. I can just focus on, say, each subtopic for an article, one at a time, just worry about writing that one little piece, and then move on to the next. And then I compile everything together to get my final article. Now again, we have not technically gotten into our article writing yet. I'm trying to lay the groundwork for you at this particular point. So when we do start writing articles, class number 4, we will begin writing articles. So all of it will make sense. So you'll understand why I'm writing what I'm writing, why things are being put where they're being put. And that way, when it comes time for you to do writing as well, so you can understand all these concepts and not have to guess at where things should go or how you should try to write. Now, I'd like to go ahead and open the floor to any questions that you may have. Anything about what I've been talking to you about in today's class. If you happen to have gone through a previous lesson and you have a question about it, I welcome those as well. At any point during these Q&A sessions at the end of these classes, throughout the whole series, you're welcome to ask me anything relevant to this series, whether it's from that class or any of the other classes in this series.